everybody, Andy Hamilton coming to you with a special Continental Championships edition Track Wrestling Podcast. The European Championships are underway in Serbia. The Pan Am Championships get started on Friday in Brazil. You can watch both tournaments on Track Wrestling. We're going to be joined a little bit later in the show by Tim Hands of 5pointmove.com, but right now we have our international freestyle analyst, Seth Petarra, on the line. How's it going, Seth?
Good, Andy. How are you doing?
Doing great. Hey, thank you for taking some time. 2 days down, 2 days still to come at the European Championships as far as freestyle goes. To this point, what has caught your eye so far?
So at 57, I was pretty interested. Georgi Adishashvili. So he transferred to Azerbaijan, and there's some wondering maybe he might not represent them here because he lost to a tough young guy named Matt Kiramirslan. Pete Spencer Layett. But anyway, Adishashvili won his second European title in a weight that I thought was going to be, between Suleiman Atli and Zara Goya, two of the best up-and-comers. But Adishashvili won his second European title for his second country because he won his first one back in 2013 for his home country of Georgia, but now he transferred to Azerbaijan. I really liked what I saw from Darin Kuraguliev at 86 kilos for Russia. He looked really good beating Alexander Gostiev in the finals, and Gostiev was actually able to, it may look like an upset, but historically Alexander Gostiev, he's a transfer from Ossetia, but he has owned the series against Olympic runner-up Salim Yassar, like 3-0 now. 2 wins, 2015 Yassar Dogu, 2016 Yassar Dogu, and now this year's European Championship. Kuraguliev was also able to get a good win over Marshkashvili and Istvan Vareb, Dado Marshkashvili, and Istvan Vareb, 2 world medalists. So I think he's looking really good, but Sadulaev's still going to be competing at this weight for this year. And word is he wants to move up to 90 kilos next year. So keep an eye out for Kuraguliev, but he's probably not going to represent them at Worlds, but he'll look good. 65 kilos, I was blown away by Elias Bekbulatov. I mean, he looked incredible. He teched his way through the European Championship, and he teched a really tough guy in Boris Novachkov in the finals. 97 kilos, I mean, Voltakayev is not the same dude that he was last year. I mean, it's pretty obvious. He lost to Riza Yildirim of Turkey in the finals. Yildirim also beat Elizbar Otakadze. If you guys remember, Elizbar Otakadze and Ansar Voltakayev both beat Kyle Snyder in 2016. So I don't know if Otakadze is known to be inconsistent, and Voltakayev has not looked the same since last year. So don't think Yildirim's quite on the caliber that they were when they beat Snyder, but he's still someone tough to watch. With Bekbulatov, I think something to watch after Euros is if he gets the spot, will he get the spot for to represent Russia at the Worlds? Because Romanov's moving up. The Olympic champ, Slobodan Romanov's moving up. And the world champ at 70 kilos, Magomed Kurbanaliyev, is moving down. So, I mean, seeing how good he looked at Euros, if Dilius wins, I mean, there's a good chance that he could be a world champ at 65 kilos. Trying to think if there's anything other than that for the first 2 days.
Let's stop for a second. I want to ask you about David Habit.
Dave Habit?
Yep, 2015 NCAA finalist for Edinburgh, makes a run, makes a run through the 65-kilo bracket today, wins a bronze medal. Your thoughts on him, on what you saw there.
I mean, Dave's got a really good coach, and he trains really well at the Michigan RTC with Andy Hrovat. So, I mean, Boris Novachkov's a pretty established guy, and Dave was going after him in their match. It's just some of the more – Boris just has a bit more finesse and comfort in certain positions, and that just comes from experience. He beat him like 6-0. But what I was really impressed with Dave Habit was in his bronze medal match against a pretty tough kid from Ukraine, Gor Oganesian. And David he tore him up. I mean, Dave Habit, he gets to legs probably you find one of the better guys with the weight of just getting into it. He's got powerful leg attacks. It's just at that level, Dave's really good. It's just everyone else is really, really good. So getting to them is the problem. But when Dave gets in, he can finish on most everyone. I mean, he's excellent. But, yeah, I thought he looked really good. That's Slovenia's first European medal, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
So
yep, you're right there.
He looked really – him and Boris looked good. I thought Boris would have a closer match with either Spekulatov, but I also know that Spekulatov, like, one of the most underrated, nasty guys at the weight. So I'm not mad. I picked Spekulatov, but that's beyond the point.
Well, I want to rewind to we're coming off the U.S. Open in Las Vegas, also UWW Juniors. I want to just kind of give you the floor to let you break down some of the things that you saw that impressed you. I know we talked off air about Gwiazdowski, and he was a guy that impressed you. Let's start with him. What did you like about what you saw from Nick Gwiazdowski on his way to the heavyweight title?
Well, Gwiazdowski, as an active heavyweight, doesn't ever really get stuck underneath guys, but he also there's two problems that can come from an active heavyweight. They either get stuck underneath guys so much that they don't shoot and their offense they don't attack enough, or they shoot too much and they get stuck underneath guys. Gwiazdowski has found that perfect balance, and I thought his match with Zach Ray was about as well as you could wrestle against someone as big and strong as Zach Ray. And I've been high on Gwiazdowski since, I think, last year. He had a tournament in Poland, ended up beating a guy who placed fifth at the Worlds a couple years back. And I have Gwiz as a top 20 guy in the world, so I'm really excited to see how he moves forward going into the trials, having a bye into the finals. And I think how he wrestles, he could be our next Tervel. It just might take a year or two, but he's got the style that could, develop into a high-level guy like Tervel Blagnev, where he's making bronze medal matches at Worlds pretty consistently. Also, along with Gwiz, Tony Nelson's still someone to watch, as is Justin Grant, but that's just my thoughts on heavyweight and Gwiazdowski as a whole. Well,
let's talk about David Taylor. Tex and pins his way through 86 kilos. Obviously, he's going to have Jaden Cox waiting for him in the final series, the World Team Trials, if David can get to that point. But is this a guy? When the last time we did a podcast was prior to the World Cup, and then he goes out and you said it was going to be a big World Cup for him and kind of laid out the reasons why, and then he goes and has perhaps the best performance in World Cup history. At least, I can't imagine that anybody has ever beaten more high caliber opponents in 2 days than he did.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. Do you see David Taylor as a guy that can win a world title this year?
I definitely see David Taylor as a title contender, a medal contender. I don't know how he matches up with Sadulayev. That's always the thing. Sadulayev, this is not a fight towards David. It's just Sadulayev is a monster, and so is David, but Sadulayev just a little higher. I think David will definitely be a medal contender. If he can knock off Abdulrashid Sadulayev, that'll be insanity. Because 86 kilos right now is probably, you could say it's the best it's ever been. You have two Olympic champs. You have Donnie Tirati, who you can't always get a read on him, but he's still tough. David Taylor's looking fantastic. And you also have, one of the most intimidating guys in all international wrestling, Sadulayev, who's been, he hasn't lost in like 3 or 4 years. He's a terror. But I think David's going to do really good this year. If he's able to get past Jane Cox at trials, which that'll be a challenge in and of itself. A returning Olympic bronze medalist who, I don't know. I'm definitely keeping my eye on David Taylor. I have him ranked number 2 in the world. If he can beat Jane Cox, I believe he's a legitimate title and medal contender at the World Championships. It's probably one of the most difficult things in the world to beat Sadulayev. I believe he can beat everyone else at 86 kilos. He's beaten Marcin, who, if you remember, Marcin beat Jane Cox at World Cup. But, yeah, I totally see David Taylor as a legitimate contender at 86. He's a monster at the weight.
Well, let's stay on 86 for a second. Pat Downey talked the talk, and he certainly backed up some of it. What do you think of his performance out in Vegas?
So, Pat, did he beat? Yeah, he did beat Gabe Dean. And did he wrestle Bo Nickel at all? I can't remember if he did.
He got teched by Bo Nickel. He got trap-armed by Bo Nickel.
Yeah,
he got Dean and then turned around in the next round. He got teched by Bo Nickel.
Okay. So, I mean, Pat Downey he looked good there. I mean, Bo Nickel's a legitimate hammer, but beating Gabe Dean is pretty big, and the way he did it, too. When Pat entered the Open, I was a little skeptical. I was thinking with the whole Iowa State situation, is Pat going to have a steady training environment? How's his conditioning going to look? But hearing that he's training up in Wisconsin with Provisor, I mean, he looks good. He looks really good. I mean, sometimes you just can't hang upper body with Bo Nickel. I mean, that's totally understandable. The guy is a freak up there. But, yeah, I mean, let's see. Pat Downey, I mean, the sky's the limit for the guy if he's able to keep going and come back next year for the NCAAs. I mean, I could see him as a real title contender, just as long as he doesn't do any more stupid stuff on Twitter. I mean, this guy's a freak.
Switching over to UWW juniors, and we talked about Ryan Deacon just a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
A guy that really popped on a lot of people's radars at Midlands. You know, he had a huge Midlands tournament. I believe he finished third there, and you know, posted some pretty good wins throughout his redshirt season. And then he goes and beats Yanni. He beats Kanan Storr. To me, a guy that in the last 6 months has probably been one of the biggest rising stars in college wrestling in terms of guys that haven't been on the mat yet. So, or at least in a lineup yet. What did you see from him?
Deacon, the thing about Ryan Deacon is, one, he's long, and two, he can get the legs really well, and he's got a really nice head inside single that when he goes elbow down and he starts chasing the other leg, I mean, he gets it so quick because he's got that reach, and he's so good about it. He can also come out the back door like nobody's business. I mean, that's late in the match with Yanni, that's what he used to beat him. And then against Kanan Storr, who was up a weight from his breakout performance at the Schultz, where he beat Gindig and Lazor, and then lost to Dimitar Ivanov, who a lot of people said was the junior world champ, but that was a misprint. Guy medaled like 2 years back. But yeah, Ryan Deacon really impressed me here. And at Midlands, his only loss was Brandon Sorensen. I mean, come next year, Ryan Deacon, along with Kanan Storr, and I don't know what weight Yanni is going to be, but those three at the junior level are just, those guys could be immediate All-Americans right there. They have the potential to be, for sure.
Well, this week the men's freestyle team was announced for the Pan Am Championships. 57 kilograms. Tyler Graff, 61. Logan Stieber will be back on the mat, 65. Kellen Russell, 70. James Green, 74. Kyle Rochelle, 86. Gabe Dean, 97. Kyle Snyder makes his return, and 125. Dom Bradley. Seth, what are you most eager to find out this weekend about the U.S. team that is heading to the Pan Am Championships?
So at 57, I mean, Graff should win that pretty easily. That's kind of a weak weight at the Pan Am. 61, if Yalis Bonnie Rodriguez is there, that will be an insane match, because we're going to see if Logan Stieber can convert. He's got a high attack rate, and if he can, circumnavigate the really dangerous, really dangerous exposure game of YBR. Now, 65, I mean, Kellen Russell is not. He'll place here if he's on the right side of the bracket, but he's got the number 5 ranked guy in the world, Alejandro Valdez-Subir, who beat Frank Chamizo in November in Germany. He has Franklin Gomez. 70 kilos, I think James Green just breezes through this. I'm interested to see. There's a young kid. His name's Anthony Montero Christos, and when James Green was cutting down to 65 kilos last year, he lost him in the Pan Am finals. But if that match happens, it would just be fun to watch James Green just show that, hey, I was emaciated out of my mind. I can still tear this dude up. Kyle Michelle, a lot of people were surprised seeing him at this weight, but I mean, 74 kilos isn't some murderer's row. I mean, outside of Levon Lopez, Skilly is I think, let's see, 2011, 2012, 13, and 14, a four-time world medalist. I mean, outside of that, Rochelle does have a decent chance of placing. So Gabe Dean, this will be a good chance to see Gabe against two tougher guys, but not like the top 5 or top 10. So he can get a chance to wrestle a Olympic fifth-place finisher from Venezuela, Pedro Ceballos Fuentes. That should be a good match. And 2012 Olympic runner-up Jaime Espinal. Snyder, this is a really exciting match. So Renera Salas Perez, who Jane Cox beat in the Olympic bronze medal match, Salas Perez moved up to 97 kilos and was a runner-up in November at the Grand Prix in Azerbaijan to 2014 world champ Abduslam Gadisov. And Salas Perez Salas Perez, I think, won 4 tournaments last year at 97 kilos. So if him and Snyder wrestle in the finals, if that goes down, I'd be really excited about that. And Don Bradley should breeze through heavyweight. That title's as good as locked up for him.
Well, that's the breakdown from Seth Petarra. Seth, thank you as always for your insight, and we look forward to having you back in the weeks to come to talk more international freestyle.
Absolutely, I'm looking forward to it. We have the Asian Championships coming up as well. That'll be in India
next week.
Yeah.
Next week, and you can catch that one on Track Wrestling as well. So that's Seth Petarra. Thank you, Seth. And you can check out Seth's work. His analysis of the European Championships is up on Track Wrestling. We'll have more from him from the Pan Am Championships on the weekend. Thank you very much, Seth. I'm joined now by Tim Hams, the founder and editor of 5pointmove.com. Thanks for giving us some of your time tonight, Tim.
Oh, always a pleasure to speak with you, Andy.
Well, hey, I want to start first by rewinding to last week with the World Team Trials in Las Vegas. To me, it's a pretty interesting group. You got a guy in Hazanov, a 2-time Asian Championships medalist for Uzbekistan, who won the lottery to become a United States citizen. You got a couple of young guys in Mason Manville and D'Angelo Hancock. You got a veteran in Cheney Haight who thought his career was over in 2012. There's Pat Smith, and then there's 2 Olympians and Robbie Smith and Ben Provisor. From your vantage point, what's the most interesting story?
Well, the most interesting story is Manville at 75 kilos for sure. I think your viewership more than familiar with Mason Manville's story. As a senior level competitor, you could over the last year, you could see Manville's obvious talent every time he took the mat. It's almost as if it was he needed something to kind of break it out of him somehow. There was maybe a slight element of hesitance, or just the senior grind might have been a little bit. Might have needed an adjustment period. I don't know what it is. Everybody knows how gifted that kid is, but Saturday he was a revelation, and it's not just because of him defeating, the phenom Kamal Bey. His other matches too. In his first, what was it? I guess it was the quarters. It was Jesse Porter. Jesse Porter's another, star, future star in the making, and even when that got dicey, Manville still managed to keep his composure and just keep attacking. And then in the semifinals, it was Dylan Cowan. Dylan Cowan's a technical marvel. He's just a textbook Greco-Roman wrestler, sets up incredible arm throws, knows how to get to the body off his angles. And once again, Manville just attacking, slide by, short drags, just getting on angles all over the place. And I think that's what served him well in the finals, is that he didn't stop moving. And against a guy as explosive as Kamal Bey, you cannot stop moving. You just can't, because Kamal has excellent transition moves. He knows how to set traps for you to step right into his wheelhouse where he could get to his body lock or, saltos, whatever. And Manville he was like an Energizer bunny, an Energizer bunny with incredible skill. So it was yeah, it was something to see. How that style matches up against the seniors in Paris is going to be interesting. But for sure, to me at least, Manville was the preeminent story of the weekend. And then obviously Pat Smith at 71 kilograms. He's been a multiple-time finalist. He beats Rayvon Perkins, who is, without question, one of the best wrestlers in the country at any weight. He's a marvelous talent and also owns a litany of wins over Smith, including last year's Olympic trial finals. And not only did Smith beat him, he blanked him. He shut him down, and that was kind of jarring. In the finals, he has Gonzalez. Gonzalez threw and pinned Smith at the NYAC non-Olympic weight world team trials. It was another shutdown. Pat gave up 1 point in 2 matches. Second match, he won 6-0. And so I think Manville and Smith were the two, if I could highlight, that made the biggest impression on me personally. Those would be the two.
I want to ask you about the other Smith real quick. Robbie Smith, a couple of years ago, obviously really close to becoming a world bronze medalist. Olympian last year, a guy that felt like a lot of people were doubting him coming into the world team trials. What do you think about Robbie and his performance on the weekend?
Well, the interesting part about Robbie, I never doubt his performance. He's so far ahead of everybody else at 130 that his time off wasn't going to be so much of a hindrance. And the proof of that is he came back in March at the Thor Masters in Denmark. He lost his first bout to Oscar Marvik in Norway, swept the next 4. It's a Nordic system. So he actually, took first. And funny enough, during that tournament, he wrestled Toby Erickson. I think that was his second or third match of the morning. And he beat Toby 3-1. It was a grinding, kind of passivity style match. But it showed that, perhaps that gap had been closed. Because outside of Adam Kuhn last year, Erickson was it for, I think 2014-15 on. So you wanted to see, okay, is that gap really, that much narrower at this point? And sure, the first match wasn't certainly, it wasn't a bloodbath, the first match. It was a pretty competitive bout. Toby was right there the entire time. But you give Robbie an arm, and he's just so fast. He's as fast as a 59-kilo guy with an arm throw. And he gets the arm throw, and he knows what to do with it. He circled back to the head. He held him down for the fall. No, I think if there's one wrestler in particular out of the entire U.S. squad that you don't have to worry about, it would certainly be Robbie Smith. Anybody who doubted him must not have known his history. He's a performer. He knows how to perform, and he's 30. He just turned 30 at the end of January. So, with Greco, you start looking at guys, once they start to be 28, 29, you start to feel like, this could be, they're probably starting to hit the slide a little bit. But no, I don't even know if we've seen Robbie's best wrestling yet necessarily. Depending on what happens with the rule set before Paris. But no, he's formidable, and I think Robbie will actually be formidable until the day he steps down, whether that's after this year's Worlds or next. I think he's taking it year by year.
You mentioned the rules. Lots of grumbling in Vegas about this current set of rules, and one thing we know is that they could change tomorrow, and they could change the day after as well. So what are your thoughts on the rules that are in place right now with Greco-Roman?
Well, I think that what you're probably referring to was the caution in 2 on the finger grabbing. That was going to be an issue. Everybody knew that was going to be an issue coming in. USA Wrestling released a modifications document in March. So none of this was a surprise. And even still, every time it got called, it's a big surprise. Guys are standing around looking like they're confused. What are you talking about? He grabbed me. I didn't grab him. And, it's the same kind of song and dance that's been going on for years. Even when it wasn't a caution in 2, guys get their fingers grabbed. There's always machinations to show the officials that it wasn't me. He's grabbing me. Do I think the problem isn't the rules. It's consistency and enforcement. It's the same thing in football. Are you going to call it the same way in the fourth quarter as you are in the first? I mean, it's that kind of thing to me. I'm not out there on the mat, though, so talk is cheap from the cheap seats. I don't have a problem with I don't know why anybody would. I don't have a problem with a real harsh discouragement of slowing down or avoiding action. Obviously, we need that. The other part, I think, that got attention leading up to the trials was the concept of hooking, which isn't an altogether new concept, but it's obviously necessary to spell this out. And hooking, overhooks, underhooks, 2-on-1s, however you can kind of come up with different styles of hooking. Hooking leads to action. They did the statistics. They punched them through. They punched the numbers, and an overwhelming percentage of scoring holds come from hooking. So as long as those underhooks aren't just, I'm holding you in place and I'm just going to try to walk you around and make it look like I'm busy, as long as that wasn't the kind of underhook being, brandished, I thought it was called really well in that respect. I didn't have any complaints about that. The only thing that did pop up, funny enough, over the weekend was a lot of people were complaining about correct hold, or correct throw, rather. And correct throw for Greco is an absolute necessity. You have to offer an incentive, a reward for guys who are willing to take risks and try to score. Even if they don't score, even if they don't punch through for exposure, you need the correct throw. And there were more than a few matches that were decided by that. None more meaningful probably than John Savanovich's upset over Dorian Spieler at 80 kilograms in the semifinals. That was 3-1. What it was 2-1, and then Savanovich hits an arm throw that Spieler almost practically cartwheeled out of, and it was 2 for Savanovich. He goes ahead, wins 3-2, moves on to the finals. It was a big deal. But it's the artistry of Greco-Roman wrestling, is the throws. Not every throw against high-level athletes going to lead to exposure. It's just not going to happen. I don't understand why people get confused over that. These guys have been taking throws their entire lives. They know how to kind of adjust their bodies while they're engaged. You need the correct throw. I love it. I don't know why people complain about it, but certainly a lot of people did.
Well, we got a couple big events coming up this week on track wrestling. European Championships going on right now in freestyle. Greco-Roman gets started later in the week, and then the Pan Am Championships kicking off Friday down in Brazil with Greco-Roman leading off that program. What are you most anxious as a Greco-Roman follower and fan? What are you most anxious to find out this weekend?
Well, yeah, right. It's an awesome, awesome weekend for Greco-Roman wrestling for sure. The European Championships, I think everybody knows, there are very, very select few tournaments in on the calendar each year that you have to watch. It's the Worlds, depending on the year, it's the World Cup, and then it's the European Championships and the Hungarian Grand Prix. The European Championships, I think, if I was to don't get me wrong, there's probably 12.5 awesome potential matchups, but I think what people are going to want to see the most is probably at 98 kilograms is Melnikov. Nikita Melnikov from Russia is back. He basically has been, zeroing in on this event. He wasn't part of the World Cup roster. This was a reason why. He wants to prepare for this, and so he's going to be locking up with the big dog, Arthur Alexanian from Armenia, arguably the best in the world, even though Melnikov owns, I think, 3 or 4 straight wins over him, something ridiculous like that. And that, to me, is the main event of the European Championships. 59 is, Russia's roster is virtually the same as the World Cup, minus a few guys. Vlasov's not there and whatever, but I think 59 has Semenov. The reason why I'm keying in a little bit on Minjin Semenov is just because even though he's usually dominant, there are some events that he kind of seems to hit quicksand in a little bit. This usually isn't one of them, and barring something ridiculous kind of happening, I expect Semenov to win at 59. Not that I go into the prediction-making business too often. It's just that 59 is not actually the most incredibly deep weight class heading into the Euros this weekend. But Ivo Angelov is going to be there from Bulgaria, so I'm looking at that depending on the draw as the final. And it's with the Euros, just like every other international event, every other marquee international event. It's sometimes not necessarily the finals that decide these things. It's often what happens in the qualification rounds and even in the round of 16s or the quarters. It's just insane depth. Another wrestler to watch out for. He's not going to win probably. He's not going to win probably because Chakvatadze is in there at 85 kilos, but is Robert Kobliashvili from Georgia. He's another one that I think if you're not into Greco, but you kind of want to be, you might want to watch him just because he's a thrower. He's gritty. I think it was the second world qualifier last year. He broke Damian Janikowski from Poland to advance and just broke him. And he's really exciting. Also from Georgia's Jela Bolkvadze. He's another favorite of mine, depending on, what you're into. At 75 kilos, Jela Bolkvadze isn't going to. I think he's a medal candidate. I don't think he might be championship material, but he's another one. The Georgians are great at scoring. They like action. They come forward, and they're always trying to get to the body. You're not going to see a lot of grinding, boring, passivity-filled kind of affairs with them. So, overall, the Euros are great. It's a great event. One of my favorites, absolutely, every year, especially since, the last few years where these events have started to become easily accessible to watch, from, where I'm at in New Jersey. And then if you don't mind, the Pan Ams are important for American wrestling fans of any sort. The Pan Ams have a lot riding on it in a way this year because of United World Wrestling's emphasis on the Continental Championships as they relate to the World Championships in Paris. Unlike the Olympic the qualification process for the Olympics, where athletes qualify weights for their countries, and then whoever winds up showing up gets that spot. That's not how this is going to work, obviously. Instead, what is going to happen is the wrestlers who perform at the Pan Ams, however, it's on the point system for placement, not necessarily seeding, but placement. I think what it is that they're looking at the Continental Championships as a mechanism for separation within the brackets. And so first place for the Continental Championships is 12 points, second place 10, third place 8, whatever, and down it goes. So they're looking at UWW as the World Championships from 2016, which were the non-Olympics for particularly, and then also the Olympics. Now, for the U.S. team, the Olympics are irrelevant. There are 2 Olympians that are on the current world team roster for the U.S. That would be Ben Provisor at 85 kilos and Robbie Smith at 130. They both took 12th in the Olympics, so they have 0 points. But they are also on the world team roster, as are Patrick Smith at 71 and D'Angelo Hancock at 98. So those 4 wrestlers, in particular, they have to do well at the Pan Ams. I mean, you don't want to mess up an opportunity that might lead to a slightly better draw at the Worlds for sure. And also, I mean, if it means anything, the U.S. should perform very, very well at the Pan Ams. Cuba is the only other roster that I think anybody really needs to pay too much attention to. Cuba, came pretty loaded to Brazil. I mean, they have Ismael Barrero, obviously Olympic champion, world champion. He's a 3-time Pan Am Championships gold medalist. You have, obviously, Yasmani Lugo Cabrera. He was the Olympic silver medalist in 98. He's a 5-time Pan Am Championships gold medalist, for crying out loud. And then, even though they're not bringing Lopez at 130, they have Oscar Pino Hines. He won the Pan Ams last year, and he's a pretty tough heavyweight. He'd give Robbie a good match. But, the U.S. should perform well. And then, even though the U.S. team isn't stocked with all 8 world team members, the 4 that are there, it's important. It's really, really important. So it should be a great 3 days of wrestling, because the Pan Ams are Friday, one day, bang, and then Saturday and Sunday the Euro. So it's awesome. It's if you're a wrestling fan of any sort, this should be terrific. But if you're into Greco, this is almost like championship weekend in football. You know what I mean? So I'm pumped up.
Well, hey, Tim, thank you so much for the time and insight. We greatly appreciate it.
Oh, no problem, Andy. Thank you very much.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.